All right. So we are on our episode number, I don't know what it is. This is probably number 5 of uh of 10 years in the making. I have with me Michael Wieder. He is the co-founder of Lalo, which my wife absolutely loves because we have a 9-week-old and it is like the slick baby product brand that we all never knew we needed until we had a kid, and we're like, we can't have this Fisher Price like plastic green and purple and like whatever. It like really messes up the feng shui of our house. So dude, can you give me a 5-minute bio? So like, by the way, like it's not just D2C, big sweet store on my favorite street in Manhattan, Bond Street. Like, how do you get to be the person who is behind a brand like that? Like, what's the arc of your career that led you there?
The arc probably looks more like some crazy roller coaster that,
Yeah.
or more like setting out on a cross country journey without Google Maps.
Um,
My career actually started in sports and entertainment. And I started my first company in college. I managed musicians, produced events, did talent buying for big brands like Skype at South by Southwest. Ultimately parlayed that into what I considered my dream job, which was becoming a sports agent. Did that for a few years, really missed the entrepreneurial side. That was like deep down in me and realized I needed to get back to that and started a fitness tech company, bootstrapped that, ended up shutting it down. And that's when I joined an early stage tech company called Way Up, where I was the 5th employee. My co-founder, Greg, was the 4th employee. And he was leading sales. I was leading brand and partnerships. And fast forward 3+ years of being there, all the way through Series B and raising tens of millions of dollars there, and growing that business pretty big. And Greg and I were catching up, and he said to me, "It's crazy. I have some friends and family who are having kids, and I was at my cousin's apartment, and this is nuts. How people buy so much stuff, they don't know what they're getting, why they need it, how much it costs. Like, are you seeing the same thing? Are you guys trying to have kids soon? Because you've been married for a year." And that was a very blunt way to ask.
yeah.
And at the my wife and I had just started trying, and I had seen the same thing. I said, "Yes, this is crazy. I don't know what I need if I'm going to have a kid soon." And he's like, "Well, I think there's a business here. Do you want to do it together?" And I was like, "Yes, let's do it. There's definitely something here." And we dove in, started surveying people, finding out what actually was the problem in the space. Was it the products? Was it the brands? Was it the shopping experience? And what we quickly figured out was that it was really a disconnect between the brands and the consumer. That, it was really, really run by legacy brands. It was highly fragmented market where, you were basically shopping for a different brand for everything you were buying. And there was no deep connection because everything was run through third-party retail. And so we said, okay, this is weird. And we started looking into it more. And we realized that most brands were marketing through this just perpetuation of fear and anxiety. So just, your kid's not going to sleep or they're not going to eat if you don't buy this thing. And we're like, that
Right.
is garbage. Like, nobody wants to be marketed to like that. And we said, can we flip that on its head? Can we market through the idea of love and trust and be there through the different milestones parents go through with their children? Because that's an unbelievable moment that allows you to market through celebration and support. And that is the antithesis of what was going on in the market. And can we create a brand identity around that and then figure out what we need to sell and make, but really be first about the customer and the experience and the brand. That's kind of
So what was the first product? Or was the product some sort of consumable content or something like?
Yeah. So the first product happened to be a product we don't sell anymore, was our
Hmm.
stroller. And we brought that to market because, it's a highly considered product and purchase, and you make it early on. Oftentimes it's, bought by the parents themselves or the grandparents. And when we launched that, we built a ton of notoriety for the brand. Even people who didn't buy it were interacting with the brand. And 4 months later, we launched our high chair.
Mhm.
And almost immediately upon launching our high chair, we knew that's when we really had something.
Right.
Sold out in 6 hours. Sold out our next batch in a week. Like
Yeah.
it was the early stages of like you buy as much inventory as you can and sell through it. So that's really, we knew we had something. And then it became really clear that customers wanted things for their home.
Mhm.
And we
And is
focused on
that why you killed the stroller? Because they want
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. It was a really hard decision, and something, I think entrepreneurs get in their head about is like sunk cost fallacy. Like the idea of it being so hard to let go of this thing because you poured energy, money, you have inventory, whatever it may be, without the long-term vision of why you may need to move past it or forget the sunk cost. And for us, there was sunk cost. There was so much that went into that. It was our first product. It was our first baby. Like, there are not many businesses that kill their first product, and there was nothing wrong with it. Like, it was a great product, but we knew what was going to help us win.
So your brand partnership sports agent guy, Greg, is in sales. Who made this stroll? Like, are you guys drawing it out on like a pad? And I mean, like, well, this is what I'm confused by and why I wanted. It's like, look,
It's amazing.
I build software companies. I guess you could say that's what I do. Like, now I'm interviewing you, and that seems to be like what people want these days or whatever. But like, I just, like, I asked this to everyone. I'm like, I was interviewing Jen from Kin yesterday. I'm like, who made the stuff that's in the can? Like, you're telling me the whole story about like what happened or whatever, but like literally this thing that like Ari Emanuel and Bella Hadid are inbounding you about, like, who made that?
Right. No,
like,
it's a great question. And we knew we never made physical products before.
yeah,
And the first people we started talking to were people from that world, so we can get up that learning curve as fast as possible. And the thing about product development, it is like it's a function, it's a trade, but it's also a language. Because the idea of supply chain and negotiation with vendors and, setting up a reliable supply chain that can scale with your business, that has economies of scale and the nuances. Like, being an entrepreneur, you can get through a lot of it, but you have to be able to sit across the table from a factory owner, a vendor, supplier, and speak the language. Otherwise, you're not going to be taken seriously. So
right.
with every conversation, absorbing, learning, like not being afraid to ask really stupid questions, acronyms. Like, the amount of times I'd be sitting in a meeting, someone would say something and I'm like on Google, like, what is that thing they just said? Just so I could absorb it and learn it. That is just, we had to be dedicated to that. And, fast forward, like the 5+ years that I've been working on product development, I feel like that's a big, strong suit of my skill set now. The first product that I actually designed with my own fingers, a pencil and paper, just won an award. So
Really, what was the product?
So it was part of our Play Gym. Our Play Gym, I don't know, when is this being released?
It is like sometime in November. They're all
okay.
like
So
end of November. Yeah, they're going to get all. They wanted me to wait till I had like 6 individual episodes to release them all. So
cool. We're on embargo till November 7th on this. Yeah. So we just won the Parents Magazine Best Toy Award for our Play Gym, and that was a product that a lot of was my sketches, how it would come to life. And of course, we had industrial designers and engineers that actually turned it into 3D CAD manufacturable product. But one of our things was this mirror toy, and this prism that could be folded into a triangle, can lay flat, can have a mirror, can hold these art cards, can go on the gym, can go on the mat, can be turned through, can be used for peekaboo. And that was literally, we were walking to a team happy hour and I had a moment. I just pulled out my notebook and I started sketching on the notebook.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just so cool. And like, I can strangely relate to so much of this just on like, I traded credit default swaps for Lehman Brothers for 10 years. And then I'm like, I want to be an internet entrepreneur. How do I do that? Right. So like reading books, talking to people, like asking, and then even more recently than that. And like, that was like a very arduous, it was not, I mean, I would love to talk to you about like your success story in a totally new area of competence seems uncommonly fast, right? Like the title of this show is 10 years in the making. Like, like if I look at like this thing that I have right now, it's like taking, like, it's going to be like very, everybody's going to use it in direct to consumer ecom. Like they'll just, it'll be a
And they
household name at some point in the next few years. My first company I started almost 10 years ago to the day. And there's this Tom Clancy quote, an overnight success is 10 years in the making, right? This seems fast to me that you would just conceive of this baby idea. Having, I mean, you worked in startups before, which I think really, really helps. Like me coming from trading, like, dude, like the retraining of the brain that has to happen, it's just crazy. But like, still, this seems like, I mean, I don't know. Do you agree with that? Like, like to just like create a stroller that sells, and then product number 2, brushes. Like having not been like, I mean, the Hatch girl, she like had her other wedding dress business first, and then she started like, that is like a more common trajectory, I think. But like, what do you have to say about it? Like, do you agree that it's like sort of uncommon? Like,
I do. And I don't think we've reached like the pinnacle of success in what we're setting out to do and changing the shopping experience for parents. So I think there's a lot more to go in our vision of what Lalo can be. I think that there's a couple things that I think about here. Number one is I often find that there are a lot of people that pivoted out of sports and entertainment that have gone on to do other successful things because it's such a cutthroat, fast-moving industry. So like if you have that personality, you can translate that somewhere else. The other thing as an entrepreneur is I think that a lot of great entrepreneurs, or maybe this is just me, should get as close to expert as they can on as many things, but you don't need to be the expert. You don't need to be the guy or girl that's doing the best possible job at that thing. But if you can get as close and as dangerous as possible in as many things, you can hire better. You know what skill sets you're missing. You know, you can move at a different speed. And for me, I've done that in everything because I've been in music, sports, fitness, HR tech, now D2C ecom, baby world. And it's just sinking your teeth in, but it's, everything, every program, for me, I remember being really good, wanting to get really good at Sketch when I was at Way Up, because if I knew how to design pages, I can sell product vision to the product and engineering team that I know would be great for our business. And from there, I parlayed that into really learning Figma. And
what a great tool that is! Oh my goodness, it's just amazing.
Yeah. I mean, Adobe should have paid more. And I try to do that in every skill set that I consider part of my arsenal. Is like, how can I get as good as possible? I know I'm not going to be the best, the expert, because that's not my job. I want to be the ultimate generalist. Because I think that makes me a better entrepreneur.
Yep. Student of the game. I like to sort of phrase all that as. So I had Ryan Pamplin from BlendJet on the first episode, and he gave some advice that I think, I think what you, just listening to that story, I think you probably did a lot more research on the market than a lot of people do when they're just starting companies and they're like, let's try to make a stroller, right? Like just the way you described your interpretation of what the problem was is like way more in depth than I think most people would approach that problem with. Just an observation. Like, I think it's the right way. Like you're essentially doing, so there's this great book about building software called The 4 Steps to the Epiphany. And the guy's whole concept is he calls it customer development, this process. Mm-hmm. You have your product hypothesis and you have your customer hypothesis. And you have 2 separate teams testing both hypotheses at the same time. And if the customer hypothesis does not deliver demand for the product, that you are building, you stop building the product, you start over, completely different hypothesis, and then go again.
Yep.
And like whether you intended to or not, like I feel like I've seen a few examples of people that had really successful companies that either did that intentionally or like by virtue of their previous job, they were just doing that. And then they were like, oh, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, for us, neither of us were parents
Right.
when we started working on it, and we were able to approach it extremely objectively.
Right.
Parents are very opinionated and have thoughts, but also every child is different. Every parenting style is different. Like it's all unique. So by all the inputs of data that we were getting in our research, pointing us in a million different directions, but being objective, not being parents, we were able to find a common thread.
Yeah.
Among all of them and kind of like figure out which were these outlier pieces of advice.
Yeah.
So that was really helpful. A lot of things in our space just start by a parent having a problem with their kid, and then it just doesn't apply to the rest of the market.
Right. And how did you literally do that research? Like
we literally put out a survey, and we just like, put it out to friends, ask friends that we knew that had friends all over the country. We wanted to make sure it wasn't just New York where we're based, because New York operates like nothing else, especially in living situations, right?
Totally.
Like
you would come up with a weird product to serve the Manhattan. It would feed you drugs. It would feed you
funniest
drugs.
Thing. Whenever we ask New Yorkers about a product, they always ask if it folds.
Right. Yeah. Right. That's funny.
Like, how can you make it smaller?
Yeah.
Can I put it away? And that's not a problem that everybody has all over the country. New Yorkers believe it's the problem everybody has around the country.
Right. Because New Yorkers just believe that there's no other place than New York. I mean, that's just, that's what you think when you live there.
I was living. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so, we were able to dig in, and when we kind of infiltrated that survey into parenting Facebook groups to get more data and make sure we were diversifying the feedback, and then we started digesting it.
How many responses do you get from SurveyMonkey? Like, it literally, you just ran one survey.
Like 2,000 responses. Yeah.
2,000?
Yeah.
So you ran one survey, you get 2,000 responses, and you were convicted enough after those responses. You're like,
oh, people were angry. People were like,
we're going to drop everything and solve this problem.
Yeah. I mean, the survey was a part of it, but as we started getting deeper and deeper, we did research in other ways. So, pretty like into we already in the product development cycle. We were starting to like define the brand and the website and things like that. And we would just make trips to Bye Bye Baby, and we would stand there and we would talk to people.
Huh. And that's awesome. I mean,
yeah, no kids, no nothing. Yeah. We were creepy guys, like standing in the aisles of Bye Bye Baby. And there was there's one couple that will always stand out. This woman is about to pop. They are standing in the stroller aisles with their phone, like looking at their phone. And I go up to them and I say, what's the one word you would describe how you feel right now? And they both look at each other and they go, overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was all we needed. And, I found out that was their third trip there. They were having twins. They didn't know what stroller they needed. They were like about to have these kids. Like, we didn't think that parents should ever feel that way. That's an unnecessary thing. And that, why is that the thing that they're worrying about? There are so many more important things in raising a kid than that.
Like, look, my wife's mother works in a high-end baby store in Houston. So like this whole thing was just outsourced, but like the stroller thing is something that makes everywhere else in the world, they're sitting in this like floppy canvas. Like you go to France, like people are like pushing around their affluent babies in these things that they're like a little, and like here it's like, like if you don't spend $3,500 on a stroller that you can take out of your car in 0.5 seconds and activate the wheels, like you don't love your child. Just flat out. Like you are not enough of a parent unless you do that. Right. Like, but like I have the stuff, but like, I just can't, I don't understand it. And like navigating all the marketing messages, like you said, it's just like, oh, your baby's going to die. It's just, well, were you ever concerned that babies grow up?
No.
So it's like a short time period of LTV, right? Like,
so yeah, there's over 1,000 purchasing decisions made in the first year of a child's life. That's number one.
right. So it's like you make up with time, with breadth of, and I guess what I'm hearing from you is like the idea is if you are the one trusted source for this, and then they just buy everything. Why wouldn't they just buy everything from you if you're doing it that way?
I mean, generally speaking, addressable markets are pretty stagnant, right? You have this many people over, and this is who you can sell to. In our space, that is an ever replenishing addressable market. Every day there are new babies going through different life stages, and they need products
that all need 1,000 things.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, when we put out a customer survey to see what our customers want us to make, we get almost 100 individual types of products people want us to make. And we could make all of them, and we'll slowly chip away at that. And we have made a lot of progress this year in launching a ton of new product, and will next year. But there's a ton of opportunity. The concentration of LTV is probably unlike any business. You don't need, like, what would you rather do?
Right.
Sell someone 4 pairs of pants a year for the next 10 years, or sell someone 100 things in 12 months?
You're right.
And then someone else.
No, it's great.
100. Yeah. So, because you're not going to get that same person again. In our industry, it's just different. And for us, it's forced us to think about how we market a lot differently too.
Right. So what do you mean we market a lot differently? What does that mean? Different than what? Right? Like, what are you comparing
just the way we think about
just a jeans company, for instance.
Yeah, an apparel business is completely different. I mean, anything that's highly direct response, right? Like, I can buy this any day of the week. I can wake up and today is going to be the day I buy a new toothbrush or a new t-shirt or a blender. You can't do that, right? You need to be having a kid. They need to be before or at that milestone, or be unhappy with the product they chose previously to fulfill that need, right? So they have to be in a certain lifestyle. And oftentimes they're not buying the things for themselves. They're getting them as gifts off a baby registry at a shower. So in terms of like, even with retention.com, this is one of the biggest things. Is we did a really interesting look at data this week where we were re-looking back at the time to purchase from email sign up. So not people we're getting through retention.com, but people that are actively opting into our email sign up. And the average is 16 days to purchase. Wow. If you remove day one purchasers, I'll let you guess. If you remove day one purchasers, so just people getting a welcome offer, what do you think that number goes to?
I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm going to guess it's still very close to 16 days.
It's 120 days.
Is that right? Oh, so I'm thinking about this completely wrong. Sorry about that. Yeah. So I thought the point that you were going to make is like, sorry. Lots of first day purchasers, in other words.
Yeah. There's these first day purchasers that come in, they're there to buy. But if you remove the people that come that day to buy and sign up that day, it's people that are coming in and then they're buying 120 days later, either because they're doing research that they're pregnant, they're looking for a registry, and then they're buying when they need the product. For our high chair, a lot of people start at 4 months old. So if they're looking when they have their kid, they're going to buy it 4 months later because they're starting solid between 4 and 6 months. And that makes a lot of sense. We also have this other problem of people that visit our site and then they add our product so they visit our site to validate that they want the product. That's the choice they're making. And then they add it to their baby registry. But instead of them buying it, Aunt Sue buys it for them as a baby gift. And now that person looks like someone that didn't convert until we can bring them back and win. So we can't scrub our list because that person didn't purchase, because they might have signed up for our emails, but they're just waiting to buy the next thing from us because they got the other thing as a gift. So then we start looking at, okay, there are so many of our customers who their first purchase is just a cushion for our high chair, but they never bought a high chair. So now that we can extrapolate that they own a high chair through a gift, and they're really a repeat customer. So when people ask us what's our repeat rate, we're like 3x what Shopify tells us. It's way bigger. So these are challenges we deal with every day. Our conversion rate is a lot lower than benchmarks because you have this whole cohort of people who are just to validate a purchase and put it on a registry.
Right. Man, fascinating. So the brand looks great. Store on Bond Street. Like, is that sort of like, did you bone up in that category too? Did you get some really tight agency to help you early on? Like, how'd you do that? Like, or do you have other influence? It's like, I want to be the Apple of, you know what I mean? Like,
no, obviously there are brands that inspire us, right? But for us, the articulation of the brand needed to be in-house. I don't really understand people and entrepreneurs that have someone else figure out how to articulate their brand for them. That's your job as an entrepreneur, to be able to sell what your vision. Yeah. So for us, the articulation of the brand needed to be in-house. I knew what I wanted it to look like and wanted to feel like, but we would bring in creatives to help us here and there to kind of evolve it. But I'm a big believer that brands are ever evolving. They're living organisms. They need to continue to grow and adapt. But I also believe any creative that's touched our brand should be able to leave a mark and find ways to elevate it too. It's not about having brand guidelines in a box that you have to follow. But you need to make sure no matter what we do, it feels like Lalo. And so that's kind of what's guided us. And we've done as much as possible in-house.
Yeah, cool. What do your brand guidelines look like? Like, is there like a book? Is there like rough sort of,
it's evolved.
The color palette?
Yeah.
Is there like a sentence that describes it? Like,
there are some words that have been put down. We never believed in paying for $150,000 to have an agency write those few words. Like, we write those words.
Right.
And it's actually become more of a Figma design system at this point than a book or a deck. Because the visual identity needs to evolve. And there is some documentation of, photo styles and things like that, but that evolves too. And it should evolve by campaign or product launch and things like that. It just, should be ever evolving.
Yep. Gotcha. So, this sounds complex. How many people and how many places do you have going on? Are you like running back and forth to China?
So our team is mostly remote. We have a headquarters in New York, small office here because we have product and things to store and samples and stuff. We also have a small little studio space in San Francisco where some of our product team is. And we have people all over the country. I mean, we have people in Indiana, California, up and down the coast of California, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. I'm sure I'm missing. Oh, Colorado. We have people all over. And I think that just has allowed us to get a lot of great people on the team, and we try to get together as much as possible. Actually, we'll be down in Austin as a whole team, so hopefully we'll link up while we're there.
When?
For second week of December.
Cool.
So, and
I've gone in LA actually, but hit me up. I'd love to.
Yeah. And and then overseas we do have someone in Hong Kong that works for us and someone in London. But before the pandemic, we were in China a bunch, but our supply chain is quite diversified now. We have suppliers in China, Turkey, Vietnam, Thailand, Mexico. So we've really worked on diversifying our supply chain to find the best suppliers for the right products. Because our industry, you can't just go to any contract manufacturer and get baby products made. They have to be certain certifications and testing equipment and things like that, and know the compliance and regulatory constraints of baby products.
I mean, this just seems like how did you learn that? You know what I mean? It's just like, relative to what I do, it just seems so like far out there. But I guess it's kind of like, as you
put you
continue to do something, like the opaqueness of it, like becomes sharper and sharper and sharper until you're
Mhm.
finally an expert, I guess.
Yeah.
Cool. So funding, like, seems pretty capital intensive. Like, how did you think about that? What was some people are like, get as much as possible whenever you can. Like, has it been like a perpetual fundraisers? How long ago did you guys launch this? It was only like a few years, right?
Business launched 3.5 years ago.
Right. So how did you fund it? What was it?
I mean, originally it was like anybody that would write us a check.
Yeah.
We had 90 plus people on our cap table by the time we did an institutional round.
Wow.
We still pretty much have stayed away from traditional VC, which has been, I think, beneficial. We have a lot of great investors on our team, but we also have a lot of great cheerleaders. By having that many people on your cap table, you have people that are rooting for you, spreading the word, telling, friends and family members. So that's been really helpful, but it's a grind. My co-founder Greg handles fundraising for us. I'm lucky that he loves it. He loves fundraising. He's probably one of the only founders out there that loves fundraising.
Yeah. I mean, you're a lucky guy.
Yeah. And so that's worked. Yeah, I think we're like, we've always had, a motto that you have to survive until you thrive, and not losing sight on just like, living for the next day, continuing to grow, and knowing that that's important in the early stage. And we also, for any entrepreneurs, like, there's a lot of talk about dilution and valuation, but we have a friend who's passed this saying along to us that a half a watermelon is still bigger than a whole grape.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome. I never heard that one before.
Yeah. So that
start using that.
That stuck with us, right? Like, if you can grow something, if you can continue to make that thing big, it's okay if you own less of it. Because at the end of the day, that investors, the dilution is what allows you to do the things you want to do to make the business as big as possible.
Right. So you mentioned your co-founder loves fundraising. Like, did you, and like, also with this idea that you're constantly sort of taking on new generalist skills or whatever, how did you, so when I started my first company, I would consider a mistake that I made was I had for a software business, 2 business side co-founders and one developer, which is just either 1 and 1 or like 2 developers and 1 business side co-founder. Because like you're building something and there's nothing for the business guy to do forever. You're just sitting around. So like, how did you, like, brand partnerships, sales, like this is pretty closely related skill set,
Yeah. I mean, my skill set is a little bit more on the creative side. Creative thinking strategy.
And has that always, like, you came into this knowing that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was, I think, a big reason he asked me to, do this.
Right.
Very, very seed of an idea. But one thing we did early on that was really helpful is we wrote down who was the final decision maker and what, because we're both opinionated people. There is overlapping like ability and those two sides of the business are very closely aligned. Like our backgrounds aren't that far apart. Even if my skill set is more like creative and I can design and do things like that and have that creative eye. For us, by writing that down, we knew that if we disagreed on something, we knew who the final decision maker was, and that we would.
Can you give me like 3 examples of
disagreement?
Like things that you wrote down. Like,
yeah, totally. I mean, creative, brand, marketing, technology, retail, CX on his side, CX, finance, legal, HR, fundraising.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
If we had 2 term sheets and we were arguing on which one to go with, he's like, I think this is the best one. Like, I know it. I'm going with his word because that's.
Do you have like even like voting founder shares or whatever?
Yeah.
So like, if there was 50, like yeah, okay, I gotcha.
So
that's interesting.
I mean, that was helpful, right? Like, if you are in a co-founder relationship that is not 50-50, there is a power dynamic that is different.
Yeah. Yep. So speaking about an end game, you mentioned having like sort of like much bigger vision for this, right? So what are you guys trying to get out of it in the end? And has that changed? I mean, you started this business at a very strange time.
Yeah.
Did that strange time change anything about, has like the future vision? I mean, to me, my future vision changes all the time. Like I tried to sell this business in February, the guy walked and I'm like, I'm so glad I didn't sell this thing because it's like so much bigger than I thought it was. So what is, sort of current that you guys are shooting for, medium and long term, and like, has that changed since you started it?
Has it changed? I don't think it's really changed. I mean, for us, we want to create a generational brand. We don't think that there's been a generational brand in baby for a long time, right? Like, there's Graco, which is a mass market brand, been around forever. There's other brand, Fisher Price you mentioned, Gerber. Those brands are so old. Like there hasn't been a brand that's generational. That's a brand, not a product, but a brand in a long time. And we want to be, we want to look back and we want, when we have grandkids to know that they're going to still be able to be in Lalo product. We want to build this thing as big as possible.
Love the ambition, by the way. That's like amazing.
Yeah. And there's no reason that can't be, right? Like,
right.
But for us, the way that we get there and, the potential, like, look, we both have 2 kids and families and live in New York. And, so yeah, we want to make this thing as big as possible to provide as much as possible for our families. And I think that's anybody in any profession all the time, right? Like that doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur.
So like, here's what I'm curious about, right? Like my gross margin on my business is like 98% or whatever. When you're like running one of these things that's not that, and there's like this near-term trade-off of, literally like cash to me versus growth rate versus cash to the business. Like, what, I mean, is it just like, how do you think about that? Because to some extent you could just grow faster. Is there like living in Manhattan, like with kids, like that is expensive, right? Like, are you just like, look, we're going to like agree to whatever our salaries are for however long, we're going to reassess in 2 years or whatever. And then we're like, how do you think about life budgeting? And then how do you think about the growth cash flow trade-off for your business,
Yeah. I mean, for us, early on, we didn't pay ourselves for almost a year. Like
I didn't pay myself for 5 years.
Yeah.
5 years.
Yeah. And God bless, maybe Lehman Brothers was those credits.
Well, I caught a good little, for CDS traders, the financial system blowing up was fantastic. And then like Barclays bought us and paid us these big bonuses. So like, I was able to do that. I'm not like most people cannot, right? I self-funded a business and was able to do that.
It's a beautiful thing. Yeah. So for us, any chance we can to be able to, pay ourselves what we think we deserve. And, obviously there's the ownership piece is, it's a conversation with our board and we do it in a responsible way. And then cash flow for the business. I mean, look, you can grow at all cost and be out of business. There are plenty of,
right.
We've seen D2C businesses in the last year go through different types of quote unquote acquisitions or straight on go out of business. And that's not going to stop because the way to run a business is changing. And that doesn't mean that businesses need to be profitable from day one. Like there is a benefit to having outside funding and be able to grow at a certain speed and pace that is good for the long term. But you do need to know how to become a profitable business if you're selling physical goods. Like that is no doubt important. And it's capital intensive. So you have to just think about the different ways you finance your business and, debt vehicles that are important to financing inventory or, when's the right time for an equity raise, how much time to leave, how much runway to leave yourself if you're going out to raise. Like a lot of people wait till like a month or two of runway. And it's like, it's already too late. Then you're like taking a bridge at a crappy valuation and figuring it out. So we think a lot about cash flow, and it's obviously always a topic at a board meeting and things we talk about every day. And where do we invest? And we've remained a pretty lean team. I mean, we're still under 20 full-time employees.
Love that. Are there private metric valuations that you follow anywhere? Like, that's probably a question for your co-founder, but I'm just like fascinated by this. It's like, if you're out in the market all the time, how do you even know what you're asking for,
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of different valuations that have been out there in our business. And most of at the ultimate, they're trading often on, multiples of EBITDA, but sometimes revenue. But there's never anything been done that's a good comp for our business either. None of these businesses that have traded, some at 15 times EBITDA have no D2C channel, no ownership of customer data, like none of that.
Right.
So how do you then comp that to a business like ours that does have those benefits and added value?
It's a great question. It's a great question. Well, man, that's just so different than what I do every day. It's just like such an awesome thing to be able to like get into the heads of people like you. So wrapping it up, if you could write one marketing tip on a billboard, what would it be?
Write your own playbook, and your own
playbook,
italicized or underlined or something.
Right.
I think in our space, especially in marketers in general, that it's always falling back on best practice. And it's like, how do you think the best practices started?
Right.
They were new at one time. Someone tried something and fucked shit up.
Right.
That's how a practice becomes a best practice.
Yeah.
So, focus on, you may want to like go in a direction of a best practice, but always think about how to apply it to your business, to your challenges. Think about the slight nuances that drive your business forward. Don't just do it that way because that's how it's been done before.
Love that. Love that. In the final 5, favorite book?
Favorite book?
Yeah.
So my favorite book, I don't know if I would call it a favorite book, but it's a book I always recommend. I buy it for my team. I buy it for a lot of people, is Checklist Manifesto.
Checklist Manifesto. I have a copy of it and I haven't read it, but I'm a checklist Nazi. So I'm going to actually put it on my thing to read soon. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great book. And it's one of those books that looks really dry, but it's super fascinating. The anecdote stories about how checklists can save the most catastrophic things. And then you start thinking about how it applies to your business and your teams and talking through surgery and pilots and all of that. So
sure. Love that. Are you following either a CEO or like a person that has influence on you, your life, how you're doing things, whatever?
Like on social media or in general?
Yeah, just like whatever. Like, I don't know. Like, I like Elon Musk. I don't follow him on social media. Everybody says he's going nuts now. I think it's amazing that he's like sending people to the moon or whatever.
He just fired like 4 guys today. Is there someone I follow? Yeah, I think, I mean, personally, there's someone who's near and dear to me named Jerry Inzerillo, who, especially when I wanted to be a sports agent, he dealt a lot with behind the scenes with very powerful and famous people, and just how to treat your life and how to treat people with respect, and how to deal with different types of personalities. He's been very influential in my life.
It's a great answer. We know you're married. We know you have kids. You said you lived in Manhattan.
In Brooklyn. I live in Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. Yeah, sorry. New York. Favorite vacation you ever been on?
Probably my honeymoon in South Africa.
It was so bad.
Yeah, South Africa. So yeah.
What was the whole summary of it? Did you like do the safari thing and like the wine thing and like the whatever? Like,
yeah, we did all of it. We did. So, I felt really strongly. So Jerry, who I mentioned, Jerry Inzerillo, he actually produced Nelson Mandela's inauguration.
No way.
And Nelson Mandela was his daughter's godfather. So I felt very strongly that that if we were going to South Africa, we were also seeing some of the history and learning and understanding that too. So, that was really important to learn about the apartheid and the impact it had on that country, and really, really fascinating how that democracy was formed. But we did that. We went on safari to the bush for a few days. We went to Cape Town. We went to wine country, and just the different experiences. We did bike tour in Soweto, and we got a lot of different types of exposure to different types of people and amazing food and amazing scenery and culture, and just really it's an awesome place.
Man,
and
that sounds
nature.
amazing. Somebody else, I forget who it was, but they were like, my wife and I literally feel like our life began after we spent 3 weeks in Africa. And I'm like, was that enough time? And he was like, and they were like, I forget who it was. I would go back to Africa as frequently as possible for as long as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, never been to a lot of places. Africa, never.
Definitely recommend. Now there's a direct flight from New York.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Wieder, thank you very much. That was just a fascinating chat, like very enlightened. Like all of these questions I have, I just couldn't even have guessed your responses to them. So, I mean, that was fun to be the interviewer.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for having me.
And I appreciate the time, man.